So another thing we talk about in September, or late August for that matter, is last time we talked about estimating yield and that type of thing. And again, through dry weather, you might notice more of this, of differences in ear size, maybe more so than normal. It's hard to have a consistent ear that is 18 rows around and it's 40 kernels long on every row. Even in the best of years, it's difficult to achieve that. Dry years have a tendency to separate this a little bit more. So you're going to see a lot of genetic separations this year. When it rains, everything looks good. Under irrigation, everything looks generally better, and it's hard to separate genetic differences, or maybe what I would call sins of the spring that are kind of coming to fruition now as you're prepping for harvest and looking at your crop and looking at some of these ears that have developed. This is a great example of what we talk about and the importance of seed spacing and depth control at planting. I've always said planting is probably the most important thing that you can do every season. You've got one shot at it to do it right. Now, agronomically, I can always nitpick things a little bit, but this is the reason why I nitpick things a lot, is because usually about this time of year I might get a question or two from a grower saying, how come this ear is smaller? Why is it? Well, here's a great example. So you see some average type ears kind of going through the top here. Now you see this one's a little smaller. This one, it's a good sized ear, but this one's really small. Why? If you look at the base of the plant, and I'll kind of shuck back here, you can see the difference in spacing. When you look at 32,000 and 30-inch rows, you should have a kernel of corn about every 8 inches or so. This isn't 8 inches. So we have ununiform drop, okay? It is harder to do that if you're doing this in a plot like this one, where you've got different grades, different seed weights, weights by grade. However, this is also a good example of what happens when we don't get good uniform spacing and we've got good depth control on planting depth. Now, some may ask, well, wait a minute, if it would have rained more, would this ear be bigger? Probably, but so would this one be. I mean, that's a fair-sized ear in dry weather like this, but this is about half the kernel count. This is probably about a third of the kernel count. It's something, and something is better than nothing. However, our goal is to even this out and make all these ears uniformly the same. Really goes back to planting in seed spacing as well as depth control. So as you're setting your planters this year, as you're setting your combines this fall, we want to focus on residue management. We want to make sure that the residue that is harvested is spread evenly so that we don't have any questions as far as, well, we had a lot of residue and it was hard to penetrate in the spring. We didn't get quite the depth that we wanted there because it was right behind where the machine ran last fall. These are types of things to pay attention to. Make sure that distribution, your fins on your choppers are properly adjusted so you're getting wide spreads, especially on some of these soybean platforms that are 30 to 40 feet or more. It's hard to get that residue spread evenly. Do your best. Those are things to remember as we go through this harvest.